Okay, so we're diving deep today, and this one, I got to say, I was really intrigued when you sent this over. It's John C. Maxwell's "How Successful People Think,"
Yeah.
and I think anybody who's listening to this show is probably somebody who is really interested in making the most of their time, making the most of their thinking, and becoming more effective in their thinking. So
Absolutely.
this should be right up your alley.
Yeah, it's not, how to think in sort of a, pie in the sky kind of way.
Right.
It's really a practical guide to how to actually make your thinking better and come up with better ideas.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it is that he actually gives kind of a process of framework.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do in this deep dive is really get into both the principles that he lays out and the process for actually making your thinking more effective.
Right. And it's not just about thinking in a vacuum, It's
Yeah.
about thinking in a way that actually produces results.
Results, exactly.
That makes a difference in your life and the lives of others.
So let's jump right in.
Okay.
So Maxwell starts out with 6 principles for better thinking.
Yeah.
And the first one is to feed your mind with quality input.
Right.
And I think, this seems kind of obvious,
Yeah.
right? Like, you are what you eat kind of thing. But he really gets into, like, not just passively consuming things, but really being intentional about what you're reading, what you're listening to.
Yeah, the books you're reading, the magazines, the articles, the people you're listening to, the
Yeah.
podcasts you're listening to.
Who you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he really emphasizes the idea of capturing ideas. So like
Mhm.
when you read something or you hear something,
Write it down.
write it down, keep it visible.
Keep it somewhere where you can see it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we have these little sparks of inspiration, but then they just kind of disappear if we don't capture them.
Yeah, I've got notebooks everywhere and
Mhm.
and little pieces of paper
Yeah.
all over the place with ideas scribbled down.
I've got a whole file on my computer called ideas,
Oh yeah, me too.
and I just, I'm constantly adding to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll go back and look at it and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that idea."
Yeah.
But
It's there.
it's there, yeah.
It's captured.
So the second principle is to surround yourself with thoughtful people.
Yeah.
And this one really resonated with me because I think that,
Mm-hmm.
the people that you spend time with have a huge influence on
Absolutely.
how you think.
He uses that analogy. Iron sharpens iron.
Right.
So if you're surrounded by people who are sharp
Yeah.
and who are thinking about things
Yeah.
and who are challenging you,
Yeah.
then you're gonna become
Right.
sharper yourself.
And it's not even necessarily that they're like
Yeah.
super geniuses or anything.
It's just that they're curious. They're asking questions.
Engaged.
Yeah, they're engaged in the
Wow.
world.
Yeah.
They're not just passively
Right.
letting life happen to them.
Yeah, they're not just watching TV and,
Yeah.
scrolling through social media all day.
Yeah, so the third principle is choose to think on purpose.
Right.
And this is something that I think a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
We kind of let our thoughts wander.
Mm-hmm.
We react to things instead of
We're reacting to our inboxes.
Yeah.
We're reacting to the news.
Yeah.
We're reacting to, whatever's happening on social media.
but we're not actually sitting down and saying, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna think about this problem.
Yeah. I'm
I'm gonna think about this opportunity or whatever.
Yeah.
He gives the example of Dan Cathy from Chick-fil-A
Oh, yeah.
and how he actually schedules
Yeah. He schedules time for thinking.
like half days, full days, even retreats,
Yeah.
just to think.
Just to think.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
It is.
That's commitment.
It is.
So the fourth principle is act quickly on your best thoughts.
Yes.
And he quotes Eddie Rickenbacker here. He says,
Mm.
think things through, then follow through.
Yep.
And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a lot of times we get these ideas
Mm-hmm.
and then we kind of sit on them.
Yeah. We overthink them.
We overthink them. We're afraid to actually take action.
Or we're waiting for the perfect time.
Yeah, or we're waiting for the perfect time.
Yeah.
And he's saying, ideas have a shelf life.
They do.
There's a time when an idea
Mhm.
is hot and you need to
You got to strike while the iron's hot.
you got to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But it's a balance, right? Because you don't want to just be impulsive
You don't want to just jump into things without thinking them through.
Right.
But you also don't want to let that paralysis by analysis set in.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to find that.
You got to find that sweet spot.
Sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fifth principle is let emotions fuel future thoughts.
Right.
And this one is a little bit.
This one's interesting.
Yeah. It's a little bit counterintuitive, I think, because, you know, we tend to think
we need to be motivated.
We need to be motivated to think.
To take action.
But he's saying that, you know, the positive feelings that come from having thought something through and actually, you know, having a win can actually fuel future.
It can create momentum.
Creativity.
Yeah.
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 So it's like the thinking can actually lead to the motivation.
It can.
Rather than the other way around.
Right, because when you think something through and then you act on it and you get a positive result, that creates a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And that sense of accomplishment can then fuel you to think about other things.
Makes you want to do more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so the sixth principle is repeat the process.
Right.
And this one is really about the long game. You know, it's not about just having one great idea.
Yeah.
It's about
making this a habit.
Making it a habit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about developing a lifestyle of thinking.
Yeah, and consistently, you know,
consistently
coming up with new ideas.
Right.
So those are the six principles, and those are really the foundation for the process that he lays out.
Right.
Which is the how-to part of the book.
Exactly.
So the first step in the process is to find a place to think your thoughts.
Yes.
And this sounds kind of...
It sounds simple.
Yeah, it sounds very basic, but
it's profound.
It's actually really profound, and I think it's something that you know, most people don't really do.
Right.
They don't actually have a designated place where they go.
Place for thinking.
To think.
Yeah, and you know, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people like to think in the shower. Some people like to think in the park. Some people like to think, you know, in their car.
Driving.
Yeah, when they're driving.
I've had some of my best ideas actually on airplanes.
Yeah.
It's something about being
up in the air.
30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the point is to
find.
To have a place.
Your place.
Yeah, and to go there regularly.
Regularly.
And he emphasizes the importance of
writing things down.
Having
a notepad.
Or
a
phone or whatever.
Yeah.
Handy so that you can
capture those thoughts.
Yeah. Because as we all know,
they disappear.
Those thoughts disappear
if you don't capture them.
Like vapor.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so the second step in the process is to
find a place to shape your thoughts.
Yes. And this is where
you take those raw ideas.
Yeah, you take those initial sparks and you start to mold them. Yeah, you start to kind of shape them and refine them. Yeah. And he makes the point that
they rarely come out fully formed.
Yeah, they're not perfect. They're not perfect when they first come out.
When they first come out. Yeah.
They need to be refined.
And he quotes his friend Dan Ryland, who says that ideas need to stand the test of clarity and questioning.
Right.
And I think that's a really good point because
it is.
A lot of times
we fall in love with our ideas.
Yeah, we fall in love with our ideas and we don't want to
question them. Too hard.
Right.
But that's actually where the real growth happens.
That's where the growth happens.
Is when you're willing to
challenge your own thinking.
Yeah, to really put those ideas to the test.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes the importance of writing down your thoughts during this stage.
Absolutely.
He quotes S.I. Hayakawa, who said, learning to write is learning to think you don't know anything clearly unless you can state it in writing.
So true.
Yeah, and I think that's so true because when you try to write something down, you really have to
think it through.
Looking it through.
You can't just kind of let it float around in your head.
Yeah, you have to organize it. You have to
make it coherent.
You have to make it coherent. Yeah, and in doing so,
you clarify your own thinking.
Yeah.
And he talks about some of the byproducts of this shaping process. You know, humor, humility, excitement.
Yeah.
Creativity, fulfillment, honesty, passion, and even personal change. That's a pretty
it's a pretty amazing list.
It's a powerful list.
It is. And it really speaks to the transformative nature of this process. But the third step in the process is to
find a place to stretch your thoughts.
Find a place to stretch your thoughts.
Right.
And this is where you start to.
This is where you bring other people in.
Yeah, you bring other people into the equation.
Yeah.
And Maxwell talks about how earlier in his career, he tended to keep his ideas
close to the vest.
Close to the vest, yeah.
He didn't want to share them until they were perfect.
Until they were perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
But he learned that.
That was a mistake.
Yeah.
That actually he needed to
get feedback.
From other people.
And he actually says that, you know, the formula for stretching thoughts is the right thought plus the right people.
Right.
And the right environment at the right time for the right reason equals the right result.
That's a lot of rights.
That is a lot of rights.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really important point.
It is.
Because it's not just about...
It's not about just brainstorming with anybody.
Yeah, it's not just like throwing ideas out there and seeing what sticks.
Right.
It's about being really intentional about
who you're talking to.
Who you're talking to.
And what their strengths are.
Yeah, and what their
perspectives are.
Yeah, and what their perspectives are.
And what their experiences are.
And what their experiences are. And finding people who can
challenge you.
Who can challenge you. Who can
push you.
Yeah, who can push you and who can
help you see things that you're not seeing.
Yeah, who can help you see things from a different perspective.
Right.
So the final step in the process is to find a place to land your thoughts.
Right.
Right. And this is where you actually take those ideas.
So you got to implement.
And you implement them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he quotes C.D. Jackson here, who says, great ideas need landing gear as well as wings.
Right.
And I think that's a really good analogy.
It is.
Because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't know how
to land it?
To land it.
Yeah.
It's not going to go anywhere.
It's just going to be a pie in the sky idea.
It's just going to be a nice thought.
A nice thought.
But it's not going to actually...
But it's not going to make a difference.
Make a difference.
In the world.
In the world, yeah. And he uses the example of Einstein's theory of relativity.
Right.
Which is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But it didn't really have any practical application.
For a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
Until it was
applied.
Applied, yeah.
In the development of the nuclear reactor and the bomb.
And that's when it really...
Yeah, that's when it really...
Changed the world.
Changed the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he breaks down the landing process into three parts. The first part is landing it with yourself.
Right.
And he emphasizes the importance of
personal belief.
Personal belief and
integrity.
Integrity. Yeah. And he asks three questions here. Do I believe it? Do I live it? And do I believe others should live it?
Right.
And I think those are really important questions.
Those are really important questions to ask yourself.
To ask yourself, because if you can't answer yes
to
all three of those questions,
then you're not really bought in.
Then you're not really bought in. Yeah, and if you're not bought in,
and you're not going to be able,
you're not going to be effective in landing it with anybody else.
To convince anybody else.
Yeah. So the second part is landing it with key players.
Right.
And these are the
people who can actually make things happen.
Yeah, the movers and shakers.
The influencers.
The influencers.
Yeah. The people who have the resources.
The resources.
The authority.
The authority.
To actually bring your idea to fruition.
Yeah. And he makes the point that, you know, you need to be...
You need to be strategic.
Strategic about who you...
About who you approach.
Yeah, about who you approach and how you approach them.
Right.
And you know, what their motivations are.
What their motivations are.
And how your idea...
How your idea aligns with their motivations.
Aligns with their motivations, yeah.
Yeah.
So the third part is landing it with those most affected.
Right.
And these are the people who are actually going to be...
On the front lines.
On the front lines, yeah.
Are people who are going to be using your product or your service.
Or who are going to be...
Or who are going to be affected by your policy.
Yeah, or affected by your policy or whatever.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. And he says that these people can provide invaluable reality checks.
They can.
Because they're the ones who are actually going to be...
In the trenches.
In the trenches, yeah.
Yeah.
And they can tell you.
They can tell you what's going to work and what's not going to work.
What's going to work, what's not going to work.
Yeah.
And they can help you to identify potential flaws.
Right.
That you may have missed.
Even after you've thought it through and you've shaped it and you've stretched it.
Yeah.
You know, you still need that feedback from the people who are going to be most affected.
So just to kind of recap here, Maxwell gives us these 6 principles for better thinking.
Right.
Feed your mind, Surround yourself with thinkers.
Think on purpose.
Think on purpose.
Act quickly.
Act quickly.
Let emotions fuel you.
Let emotions fuel you.
Repeat the process.
And repeat the process.
Right.
And then he gives us this four-step process for developing thoughts.
Right.
Find a place to think.
Find a place to shape.
Find a place to stretch.
And find a place to land.
And find a place to land.
Yeah.
And I think that's just
it's a really great framework.
It's a really great framework, and it's something that anybody can use.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be a
CEO.
A CEO
or a rocket scientist.
Oh, rocket scientist. Yeah. To benefit from this.
Yeah.
It's really about just
more intentional.
Being more intentional about your thinking.
About your thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you're thinking about all this,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to leave you with a question.
Okay.
Think about those different thinking places that Maxwell talks about.
Mm-hmm.
His car,
the shower,
the park,
his bedside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where are your thinking places?
Right.
Where do you go?
Where do you do your best thinking?
To do your best thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, experiment with different places.
Right.
Try going to a different coffee shop or a different park or
a different room in your house.
Yeah, a different room in your house, or even just a different
chair.
A different chair. Yeah. And see how that affects your thinking.
See how it changes your perspective.
Yeah, because I think you'll be surprised at how much
of a difference it can make.
Of a difference it can make just by changing your environment.
Absolutely.
So that's our deep dive into John C. Maxwell's How Successful People Think.
Great book.
I hope you found it helpful.
I hope so too.
And I hope you'll join us next time for another deep dive.
Yes, see you then.